Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video we're breaking down Black Knight on Netflix. In case you've not seen it, no, it's not that Martin Lawrence movie from the noughties. This is actually a new Korean Post Apocalyptic drama that feels like a mix between Mad Max, The Hunger Games, X-Men and a lot more. There's so much to talk about, and throughout this video we're going to be going through it all to break down everything. Full spoilers ahead, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, then I highly recommend that you check out now. Please hit the thumbs up button, and if you enjoy the video, make sure you subscribe for breakdowns like this every day. Out of the way, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Black Knight. Now the series takes place in the aftermath of a comet that hit the Earth 40 years ago. This decimated the landscape and completely destroyed the atmosphere, leading to oxygen becoming the planet's most valuable commodity. Most continents sunk into the sea, with the Korean Peninsula now becoming a desert. With just 1% of the population left, a new social structure was created in which some members of the public are given QR code tattoos that give them a higher ranking. This is demonstrated by the use of an upside down triangle in the intro, which actually becomes symbolic later on. I'll talk about this more as we get into the video, but a big mystery in the season centers around the triangle tattooed soldiers that we meet throughout. Now, the entire populace is divided up into the status of Corps, General and Refugee, which becomes important at the end. The whole society is heavily relying on soldiers known as delivery men, who are basically Amazon Prime drivers that are allowed to carry guns. Now they take things like oxygen and supplies from one location to the next, and are basically the backbone of this new world. When watching this, I couldn't help but think of the essential workers that kept everything going through the pandemic, and because of this, the delivery men have access to almost everything. Now those that weren't chosen to be part of the system are labelled as refugees, and these outcasts were forced out in the harsh landscapes, with a lot of them becoming hunters that attempt to steal supplies from the delivery men. Thus the delivery men have to be extremely skilled combatants, and we primarily follow a legendary one known as 5-8. Sometimes he's called 5-8, sometimes he's called 5-8. I'm just going to call him 5-8 from now on, but what you need to know about him is that he's basically a badass with a heart of gold that would probably have the high score on Crazy Taxi. Now throughout the season, he slowly unearths why so many refugees are disappearing, whilst he acts as a mentor to one aspiring to join the delivery men. This is Refugee 34, who originally lived in some of the irradiated zones before he was taken in by a woman known as the Major and her daughter. It violates the law to harbour refugees, but he's managed to hide with her whilst also doing deals with his buddies out in the refugee zones. They're led by a character known as Grandpa, who becomes a big person later on. Gonna be honest with you, whenever I cover Korean shows, I normally shit myself thinking I'm gonna butcher all the names, but when they started calling them 5-8 and Grandpa, I was bloody loving it. Probably get in trouble for talking about refugees all the time, but moving on. Now it turns out that 34 is basically a mutant that has the ability to rapidly heal. One day his apartment is stormed by some soldiers and his sister's shot and killed whilst he takes a bullet to the head. He manages to survive it though due to his mutant abilities, and he then begins the trials to become a delivery man. They're basically big elimination rounds that see him showcasing how much of a nice guy he is when he attempts to help the other players out. Though the CGI in the car scenes was a bit ropey, I actually really enjoy the turns that it took, and with shows like this, you can see why K-dramas continue to be some of the best out there. I also noticed in episode 3 that 34 was wearing a Simpsons top, but they all had on gas masks, which was a nice little touch. With everything that was going on in the world whilst they were filming it, it was actually pretty smart to incorporate masks into the plot like this, and it probably made filming during the pandemic a hell of a lot easier. Now normally when we're dealing with post-apocalyptic stuff, it all gets tied in with supernatural things like zombies or aliens, but this managed to keep the focus on the humans and still keep things interesting. Now, as this tournament is going on, we see as 5-8 starts to investigate who was behind the attack on 34 and his family. This leads him to uncover Ryu Suk, which I think I got that right, who is the wealthy heir to the Chunyum Corporation. Now, towards the end of the season, we learn the group has actually been polluting the air through the use of their cleanup vans, which are supposed to be making things better. He also broadcasts the final round of the Delivery Men tournament, which brings in refugees from around the area before he has explosives set off that kill them. He also carries out a vaccination program designed to wipe out the refugees, and lots of social commentary I'm sure people will be able to read into lots of different ways. Now, going against his father, the delivery men attempt to assassinate Ryu Suk, but this ends up failing. We learn that Grandpa isn't all that he seems to be, and that he's actually friends with Ryu Suk's father, who's called Ryu. We see that he burned the QR code off his hand and would rather live above ground without steady oxygen than underground where it is. He also helped to make the air core, which converts the atmosphere into oxygen, and it allows the higher-ups to have a steady supply. His garden shows that the Earth to the south is getting its oxygen back, and that the world is now healing. Ryu wanted to give oxygen to the refugees and move them to the general area, which his son was dead set against due to the money involved in their corporation. He's also prejudiced against the refugees because he doesn't see them as being something that can offer society any benefits. They have their oxygen, and those in the more structured area all have QR codes. Therefore, he sees the refugees as a blight that steal from his delivery men, and the people he views as being worthy of life. Now, the entire arc with the father could be a commentary on him switching from being a capitalist into a socialist. K-dramas always have a wealth of political subtext to them, and there are those that believe it won't work, or they simply don't want it to. Thus, a coup is staged, and Ryu is killed during this with his son assuming command. The president is captured by the defense minister, and thus this gives both him and Ryu-suk control of Korea. Now, he orders all the delivery men to be tracked down, which takes us in the final part of the season. Exposing the medical program for what it is and mounting up, the delivery men storm Ryu-suk's base whilst 34 is caught and captured by him. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned so far is that he was bringing in lots of refugees to take their mutant blood. I think. Don't know, this whole thing, it's kind of the subplot of the subplot, but it does basically put 34 in a lot of danger. Now, why I'm bringing this up now is that we can catch him at the end attempting to do a blood transfusion with 34, and this is so that he can take his abilities. The transfusion has to be stopped though when delivery men reach the core, and the president is then saved. The defense minister is arrested, which leads to the soldier surrendering, making Ryu-suk take on desperate measures. He starts the process of overloading the air core, and though he's taken down, this still explodes and destroys the capital. However, the populace manage to make it out along with the freed refugees, and the president announces the societal structures are now being abolished. Everyone will be viewed equally without discrimination, which leads into us getting a 3-month time jump that hints to where things could be going. Now, what does the ending of Black Knight actually mean, and what happens in it? Well, we pick up with 5-8 still carrying out his duties, and he finally takes 34 out into the world after his long recovery. We see that due to the lack of Ryu-suk's pollution bans, that the air's started to clear, and the harsh dust storms that once ravaged the land are disappearing. In the final moments, 34 winds his window down, and both he and 5-8 are able to sit with their gas masks off and breathe in the air. Man even sticks his head out the window to get a sniff of it, and it shows just how much the planet has been turned around. Now, what does this all mean? Well, I think the series is clearly commenting on things like climate change, segregation, and how society is built with infrastructures that hold poor people in place. The corporation could have easily helped the planet get greener, but they kept polluting the atmosphere in order to make more profit. Now, this can very much be viewed as a metaphor for real life, as we have several corporations that heavily destroy the atmosphere, but rather than scaling things back, they prefer to expand their profit margins at the cost of others' well-being. The way Ryu-suk uses the refugees as experiments to empower himself could also be seen as symbolizing how workers are exploited and used as pawns rather than being seen as people. You have a class struggle going on here, with lots of comments on things like the pandemic, keeping people subjugated, and also who actually runs the show. Though we have a president character, it's clear the people in charge are actually the corporations, as they supply the oxygen and therefore the jobs. They have to keep people working to remain profitable, and this is why the refugees are seen as being unnecessary. They don't contribute to the profits, and Ryu-suk sees them as being something that will eat into his, which is why he has no problem when it comes to killing them. The corporation basically runs the entire show, and it also hands out the QR codes, which are what society is built upon. They're happy to have people fighting amongst themselves, and even trying to appear as the good guys by giving out the free medical exams, which are of course deadly. Now, to me, what the show is trying to say is that though leaders and politicians can come and go, the main people running things will always be these more permanent structures. I definitely think that the series is going with the idea that equality is the way to lead to a better future, which is what I personally take from the ending. Now, what this means going forward, I don't know, as there are still some stories that they could tell in this world. However, it does feel like it has a conclusive ending, and at the moment there hasn't been a season 2 announced. I'm making this video on the day of release though, so things might change, but yeah, let me know what you'd want to see in a second season if we get one. Now, as for my thoughts on the series, I've got to be honest, I wasn't that impressed by the trailers. I've made a pledge to cover as many Korean shows as I can though, because that Squid Game video, it paid for my butt lift. What? But after seeing that trailer, I thought I might just skip this. However, it's been a quiet week, so I gave it a go, and I'm so glad I did. I think this is such a good series and it works on a number of levels, pulling in lots of different things that seem like they shouldn't really work well together. However, they work perfectly, and though they add in lots of things that seem like they wouldn't really combine well, I think that they do. You've got mutants, combat tournaments, delivering stuff, which I love, political coups and so on that tell this amazing overarching story. Now, though it deals with politics, I think it's also something that can be enjoyed by both the left and right, as you can clearly see metaphors for both throughout the show. I think it works really well, and it shows how people are manipulated into doing their bidding by those in power. I definitely think if you're interested in Korean shows and you're looking for a good one, then this is definitely the one to watch. That's for my people who watch these videos without actually watching the show, but yeah, go check it out. It's 6 45-minute episodes, so it's not even much of a time sink, and I think that you'll enjoy it. I bloody loved it, I did, and that's why I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. Now, obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Do you agree with this score? Do you think it should have been longer? Are there any problems that you had? Yeah, just comment below and let me know. Sound a bit negative there. Say what you liked as well, if you did. Yeah, just talk about the show and what you thought of it. Now, as a thank you for doing that, we're running a competition right now, giving away the Quantumania Steelbook to 3 subscribers on the 15th of May. All you have to do to be win the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. We pick the comments out random at the end of the month, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now. So if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the Easter eggs in Evil Dead Rise, which will be linked on screen right now. So many good things in that, yeah, lots of stuff to talk about that ties back to the earlier movies, and if you enjoy that movie, then head over there after this. Out of the way, thanks for sticking through the video, I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.